Today's viewer's email has come in from Reggie, the subject of which was my Thailand nightmare. So, let's get into it. John, I want to thank you for taking the time to chat with me the other day. I really wanted to get this story off my chest as it's been brewing for years and years, and I'm grateful that you're prepared to share it on your channel. As I said to you when we had our chat, I've watched probably all the videos on your channel and in a way feel like I am not alone. I wouldn't wish what happened to me on even my worst enemy, and I've struggled to come to terms with it even after a lot of time has passed. But if this serves as a warning to others who may get into a similar position to me, then at least it won't all have been for nothing. Not sure exactly where to begin this story, but I think the best place to start is my arrival in Thailand and the reasoning for me deciding to make the move. So, let's start there. I'm originally from the UK and was quite successful in business, and in the early 2000s I saved enough money to have a change in life. I'd grown a bit tired of constantly working 7 days a week. While this was rewarding and provided me with a good life, I felt like it was time to settle down and live an easier, more laid-back lifestyle. I had a very good friend who was married to a lady from Thailand, and they had moved back to England together after meeting in Bangkok. He used to go on and on about how fantastic the country of Thailand was and how he planned to retire there in the future. He said his wife was a breath of fresh air, and he was very madly in love with her. There was nothing to show anything to the contrary, and when we met to go out in the evenings for meals and the odd beer, everything in his life seemed to be going great, and I was a little envious of this. I'd recently divorced my long-term English wife. This cost me a great deal of money, but luckily I was still in a position to be able to retire. I was very jaded by this and felt like I should follow my friend's footsteps and try something new. It was around 2003 that I flew to Thailand for the first time. I had no plans and no set goals of what I wanted to achieve there, but I knew this was going to be an adventure. I'd recently packed in my business and had no commitments back home, and this is just the way I wanted it to be. At the time, the pound was very strong, something that you've alluded to in many of your videos, and what I found in Thailand was beyond my wildest expectations. My first few weeks in Bangkok highlighted to me just how different places can be, and I think a video on your channel not very long ago talking about social media and how the world has shrunk couldn't be more accurate, because when I arrived in Thailand I had absolutely no idea what to expect. I stayed in a great hotel in Bangkok in the early days and had 2 weeks of living like a king. I knew that I really liked the country, so I decided I wanted to open a bank account. How easy that was back then. I walked into the Bangkok Bank branch close to Sukhumvit Soi 8, and half an hour later I was a proud owner of a Thai bank account. I brought quite a bit of cash with me from the UK, so being able to deposit this in the bank was great. Now, this isn't really relevant to the story. I just wanted to highlight how much easier things used to be a few decades ago. After doing a lot of the tourist stuff and venturing in many of the nighttime establishments, I made a conscious decision that I was going to make Thailand my forever home. I was 47 at this time, so not quite old enough for a retirement visa, but I thought a few years worth of visa runs wouldn't be too bad. Again, visa runs were easy to do back in the day, not as strict as if they are today. I'd met quite a few people on my first week in Thailand who were expats in the country, and I spoke to them at length about their experiences. I wanted to learn as much as possible from people who had already done it, and someone who liked to make friends. It was great to get starting to the swing of expat life. Most of the people I met, I did so around the Sukhumvit Soi 11. There was a fantastic expat hangout bar around there called Cheap Charlie's, where many expats would get together and chat. This came to be one of my go-to places, and many of a friendship was made there. Over the years, people came and went, and making long-term friendships was quite hard. But short-time friendships were easy to be had. Many people warned of the perils of dating in Thailand, especially dating bar girls, and I had no intention of getting involved with a girl that worked in a bar. Needless to say, I succumbed to the allure of one of the girls. My favourite place to go for a beer was the pool hall on Sukhumvit Soi 7. This was just opposite the beer garden, and no longer there. But I'd go in there most nights and have games of pool with the girls there. Now, the girls didn't actually work there, they just came to try to meet people, and I liked this more than a typical bar. After being in Bangkok for about a month, I'd have a fair share of girlfriends, but on the particular night in the pool hall on Soi 7, I met a girl, and her name was BoBo. At least that was her nickname, and she was in her mid-20s. She had quite a few tattoos and piercings, and this was something that I really liked. I got talking with her on that night, played some pool, and then took her for something to eat at a restaurant on Soi 4. She even shared a small condo with her friends on that very Soi, and she seemed to be such a genuine person. As the weeks passed, we met most nights in the same place, and I was beginning to fall for her. I was quite hesitant about the age gap, with me being 47 and her being 26, but I decided to just go with it. By this time, I thought I needed to find a natural place to live. The hotel I was staying at the time was great, but it felt like I was still only temporary there. I wanted to rent a place to live. I found somewhere close by a great 2-bedroom condominium that had just been newly constructed, and I signed a 1-year rental agreement, paid the money, and moved in. It was fully furnished as well, so all I needed to buy was a bit of cutlery, some plates, bedding, and other bits and pieces, just like that. Also, the reason I wanted to rent somewhere because I was desperate for BoBo to move in with me, and living in a hotel room wouldn't be suitable. 3 nights after renting the condo, while out with BoBo, I told her that I really liked her and that I wanted her to move into my condo with me. She beamed from ear to ear and said she would love to, and just like that, she was living with me in my condo, and I thought and considered her to be my girlfriend. The weeks getting to know each other, I learned a lot about her, at least what she wanted me to know. She was from, you guessed it, a small town in Isan and had come to Bangkok to make money because she couldn't make enough where she was from. She said her parents lived back in Isan and she sent them a little bit of money, but she never talked about anything else. I asked the right questions, such as do you have any children? Have you been married before? You know, the usual sort of questions. But to all of them she said no, and I believed her. We got into a routine living in Bangkok. I gave her 10,000 baht a month, which was a great amount back in the early 2000s, and she was happy with this. And for a good 6 months, I left out my wildest dreams, travelling all over Thailand, staying in great hotels with an absolutely beautiful girl by my side. A girl that I thought loved me deeply and who I loved as well. One thing that struck me as a bit odd was that she went to visit her parents very often, usually once a month. I didn't really mind because it was a good way for me to go out, live the single life for a bit. I'm not saying that I had any other girlfriends during this time, but just being able to go out for a beer, chat with friends, and spend a bit of time alone was great. She genuinely did go to Isan. I can remember taking her to the bus on multiple occasions. I'm watching the bus off with her inside, smiling and waving to me out of the window, and I just choked this up as part of life. I never actually asked if I could go with her, but I don't know what she would have said if I did. My guess is she would have said no. It was after this first 6 months that I decided I wanted to spend my life with her, so I proposed and asked her to marry me. Initially, she seemed a bit hesitant, not what I was expecting. She smiled though, and seemed very happy to have been asked, but she seemed deep down not to want to move away from what we had. She did say yes though, she would love to get married with me, and just like that, we were engaged. I took her to a gold shop close by and bought her a necklace, a bracelet, and a ring as an engagement gift, and her eyes lit up when she grasped the gold. Ask me what to get married, just like that. This needed to be done in two ways. Legally, by going to the district office, as well as going up to Isan and getting married there. She said we would need to do this as it was what was expected, but something about her actions and the way she spoke when she brought it up seemed to throw her off, as though she actually didn't want me to go to Isan. At the time, I didn't see any of these warning signs, but looking back is where I think about what I saw in her actions. It was arranged that we were going to get married legally first, so I got all the documentation, employed the services of a local company to dot the I's and cross the T's, and just like that, I was now married for a second time, this time in Thailand. I wore my wedding ring with pride. I was over the moon, madly in love, and with a girl that I thought loved me as well. After the legal marriage, it was arranged that we would go up to Isan to do the ceremony there. This was after all expected by her family. When we arrived, I was taken aback by just how primitive the place seemed to be. A few decades ago, there were mostly dirt tracks around the area, not many paved roads, and it seemed like a whole different world. She introduced me to her mother and father, who seemed genuine and polite, and we discussed the marriage. For some reason, Sinsort was never talked about. I was expecting to have to pay this, but no one brought this up. The ceremony that took place was not what I was expecting at all. The whole village wasn't there, like many people told me happened to them when they got married. And if anything, it was very brief, with just her mum and dad and a few close members of her family. It lasted an hour, and that was it. She seemed ever so keen to return to Bangkok, and I took that as being the fact that she already left for Bangkok, so she must love it there a lot more. So, after being in her village for only a day, we made the journey back to Bangkok. As soon as we left the village, a calm seemed to come over her, and she seemed to return back to her old ways, a very talkative, laughable sort of person who was great to be with. Again, I should have seen this as a warning sign, but I honestly thought she just liked Bangkok more and didn't really like to spend time in the village. But that's that. When we got back to Bangkok, life seemed to be amazing. We lived a normal married couple, doing things that married couples do, and I didn't see anything wrong with the situation. She did increase her visits back to Isan after we'd been together for about a year, often going a few days a month. I absolutely hated that place from my first visit, so had no inclination or desire to go with her, and to be honest, I didn't think anything of it. Her going there to visit her family was no issue as far as I was concerned, and this arrangement played out for the next few years. Living in Bangkok during this time was absolutely amazing. I was living my best life, had enough money to survive very well, and had the most amazing wife, or so I thought, and things were going perfectly. I need to fast forward now a good few years, all the way to 2014. We'd been married for what seemed like an eternity, and I thought we were happy. I need to now break down everything I'd spent money on over the years, as this makes a difference, at least to me. I had agreed to build a small house for her family back in Isan, probably after we'd been married for 2 years. That was over 1,000,000 baht. I bought a small second-hand pickup for her father after we'd been married for approximately 3 years, and that was 350,000 baht, and that increased amount I was giving my wife too, to around 25,000 baht per month. This amount didn't break me, and wasn't really a lot of money as far as I was concerned, and I wanted my wife to be happy, and for her family to be getting along well as well. I'd also agreed to pay the school fees for her niece. I bet you go away, this is going, don't you? Her niece. Let's put her niece in inverted commas. There were also miscellaneous amounts of money that I spent over the years as well, all with my wife's interests at heart. Looking back, before I get to the crux of it all, when I married her she was 26, and she never talked or spoke about wanting children. I didn't want any children, and I just thought this was the common dream of ours. How naive I was. We never discussed children or starting a family, and that was fine with me. She of course told me that she never had any children, which is one of the things that attracted me to her. A lot of the other girlfriends that I had before I decided to settle down and get married to BoBo had children back home. Well, this wasn't an issue, and in itself, just the idea that would be more people to support wasn't something I was keen on. My world came crashing down though at the start of 2015. BoBo told me that her niece was not well in hospital and she needed to go there until she was better. I didn't say anything wrong with this and took her to the bus station as normal and waved her off. But this time was a bit different. She'd been in Isan for 4 days and she usually only stayed for a maximum of 3, and there were no signs of her saying she was going to come back home anytime soon. The conversations we had on the phone were brief, and she just said her niece wasn't well and she needed to look after her in hospital until she was better. The days went by, and while we were speaking daily on the phone, it wasn't like normal, and I felt an unease come over me, remembering back to all the little things that had happened over the years, and my mind started to race. I decided that if she didn't return in a few days, I would go up to Isan and see what was going on. I'd not been back since we got married up there all those years ago. Needless to say, she didn't come back, still insisting that her niece was not well. So, without telling her, I got the bus up to her town in Isan. This was quite difficult. I knew which town it was and the name of the village and how far approximately it was from the town to her village, but that was about it. But I decided to wing it. How hard could it be? When I arrived there, I checked into a local hotel and looked for a taxi to take me to her village. I quickly got one there of these arranged, and off we went. When he told me we arrived, I didn't really recognize it. Luckily, it was a quite small village, so I walked around asking for her. After about 20 minutes, someone pointed me in a direction, and I walked up to a modern-looking small house. And outside, there she was, with her mother and father, and what at the time I thought was her niece. There was also a man there. I had no idea who that was. I called out hello, and she almost turned green. "What are you doing here?" she said. "I was worried about you because you never come back like you normally do, and I wanted to come and see how your niece was." Her mother and father looked shocked as well. They were not expecting me to be there, and the man had a bit of an angry look on his face. I walked closer with a smile on my face, happy to see my wife. This was my wife of over 10 years now, after all, so I didn't see any issue with me going up to visit. "Is this your niece?" I said. This was the first thing I said. I didn't know what else to say, and she smiled in a way that I wasn't expecting her to. It was as though the game was up in a way, and she said, "No, this is my daughter." I can remember freezing on that spot. My whole world just turned upside down. "What do you mean, your daughter? You said you never had children." "I know," she said, "but things seem to be moving so quickly with us, I didn't know how to tell you. So you've been coming every month to visit your daughter when you told me you were visiting your parents. Any other secrets?" She had a look on her face like she wanted to say something to me, but she didn't. But I kept on insisting, "Please tell me if there is something I need to know." It was then that she broke the most awful news I'd ever heard. The man sitting there was actually her husband. Not legal husband, but her long-standing husband that she had been with since she was young, and her daughter was also his daughter. I had no idea how to take this. I felt physically sick, and everything I had done for the past years of my life had been for nothing, and had all been a lie. I had been financially supporting my wife, and her child, and husband. The house that was meant for her parents, it was actually meant for her Thai husband. The pickup that was meant for her father, well, that was for her husband as well. And all the money I'd been giving her, she'd been sending it back up home. After all, I paid for everything when we were in Bangkok. She had no real need for money there. What an awful mess I had just found myself in. Over 10 years of my life had been a lie. I felt betrayed, yet I still had a sense of love for my wife. I'd been with her for such a long time. We'd had so many fantastic times together, traveling Thailand, doing all kinds of things. But was I just her job after all this? It was pretty obvious to me that I was. She knew that she needed to talk to me about this. We'd spent such a long time together. I even think she had some feelings for me. But what she did was out of love for her family, and he left for me was secondary. She spoke to me at length on that day. We went back to the hotel together to talk things through. And while I tried to think of a way where things could still work, the realization I came to was that the only way things would work was if she broke it off with her other husband, and her daughter, who was around 15 years old at this time, moved to Bangkok to live with us. The fact that I was even considering this sends a shiver down my spine even thinking about it to this day. But that's what I put to her. She looked at me and said this wouldn't be possible. It simply would not work like that. She said she was happy to continue with things as they were, but there was no way I was able to accept this. I told her I wanted a divorce, and I had a perfectly good reason for getting a divorce, so she couldn't disagree. I made it back to Bangkok the very next day and waited for her to return. She did return a few days later. She wasn't angry or upset that she was found out. It was like what seemed like a weight coming off her shoulders, that things were finally out in the open. We managed to get divorced a few days later, and she didn't fight it. She couldn't fight it really after what she'd done. She took her things out of my condo and left for good. It took me a few years to get over this. I still had feelings for her after she left, and in a way, I feel like she had some feelings or some kind of feelings for me. Or maybe I'm just imagining it. It was probably nothing more than a means to an end. She now has a house that she can live in with her husband and daughter, and if she had any sense, she'd have saved money that I'd give them to over the years. But when she left after we got divorced, that was the last I saw or heard of her. I spent the next few years after this solo travelling around the region. Well into my 50s at that time, I felt myself too old to have someone in their 20s again, and resigned myself to the fate that this wouldn't work for me. I have been single ever since, and have never told this story to anyone. In my 60s, I still live in Bangkok. I still enjoy what Bangkok has to offer, but part of me still wishes that I had a life with BoBo. She was my dream, and also my very, very worst nightmare. Thanks again, John, for giving me the confidence to share this story. Please do change the names involved just in case, and keep up with the channel. I will be an avid viewer moving forwards, and keep warning people about the perils of things that can go wrong in Thailand. One of the sad things is, I see many people who have been married long term to Thais who have never had any issues. So maybe what happened to me was just a 26-year-old girl's well-intentioned ideas going well beyond what she ever imagined. That's the way I like to see it anyway. I will leave it for now and wait to see what the people make of this story in the comments of your video. Cheers, mate, and if you're in Bangkok, get in touch for a beer. Reggie.